It's fragile. It's this great big dynamic kind of machio, self-preservation, identity, all the rest of that, what do you say? It's freaking fragile. It is. It is so fragile. It's like it's more fragile than an egg. If anybody touches it, it falls apart. It doesn't know what to do. After all of its being a blowhard, somebody just like looks at it wrong and it falls apart. It's not real. It's an illusion. And it is real, but it's an illusion, and it's really not you. Yet humans identify, and I still have a beef with Freud. If he ever tries to get into the Ascended Masters Club, I'm going to vote him down. No, he's got to make up for some of this. He made the ego out to be a bad thing and fragile and nasty and all the rest of that. He really villainized the ego. But to my point here, and what was my point in what we're doing here? I do have a point. The ego, I define. Would you write this on your magic wonder pad or whatever the thing is that you use? Okay. Is that it? Okay, the ego, my definition of the ego. It's your experience. I thought it was supposed to appear on the screen by magic, and it's not there. So Linda's just writing to herself. Don't you love technology? Oh, it's so useful. Where's my whiteboard? We could have this done if we could just write it out.
Shush.
Right here.
Keep going.
I keep going. You got to write. You have to write.
Not my fault.
Yeah. Let's get the camera on this little commotion over here. And some lights up. I want everybody to see we got to figure this out. Yeah.
Thanks, Adamus. We really love this kind of attention.
I know. Don't you like under technical pressure? Oh, there's a reason why I'm toying with you like this.
Really?
Yeah. You'll learn in just a minute.
Your experience.
Your experience based on your emotional stories.
Oh.
This is the definition of my definition of ego, which is the only definition. Based on your emotional stories as seen through others.
Oh.
By the way, I love coming in as Adamus. I get to be a little bit more carefree than Saint-Germain. And, I joke around. I act a little arrogant and pompous at times on purpose. I talk really well about myself because I can, but I want to get you into that habit of being able to do that. Talking really good about yourself, but not serious good, not like I'm the most special person in the world. It's, it's like, no, talk good about yourself with a smile on your face, okay? And joke about it and get other people kind of laughing, And there's going to be that little thing that says, oh, it's my ego, and I'm being so arrogant. Oh, yeah, and it's fun. So where were we? Your experience based on emotional stories. Every story is emotional. Everything that comes through your mind is emotional. Everything. And I had an argument recently, and I won. I had an argument recently with a friend that's here today. I'll introduce in just a moment. And this friend said, what do you mean, Adamus? Everything is emotional. How about the number? How about a number? Is that emotional? And I'm like, does a number have emotion to it? And I said, 666. And then I said 13 and 44. And 1,572,000, just because. Everything is emotional. Every part of every story you've ever had is all emotion. There is actually really no logic. It's a kind of a false thing to say that there's really logic on this planet. It's all based on emotion. Every decision you make is based on emotion. You think you research the best car to buy. It's emotion. You're justifying your emotions through research and saying, I'm really a smart person because I bought a Prius. And it's like, it was based on emotion, because your emotion brings out, I'm a tree hugger. I don't use carbon in my automobile. It's all emotion. You justify it and call it logic, and you bought a Prius, which, by the way, is a fine car. Where were we? Okay. The interesting thing about the ego, it's so fragile because it's all based on what other people think of you. The ego is, for the most part, not based on your own observations of your own self. It's the observations of how people observe you. Therefore, the ego is very, very fragile, subject to anybody's input, anybody's impression. The ego is, I'll give you an example. So you go to tell a joke, and most of you are not really good joke tellers. No, you're not, because you're not funny. No, you're still too you're still too serious, you know? You lighten up, take off those tight underwear, and then you could tell jokes. So you go to tell a joke, which you think is really, really good, and you heard somebody else tell the joke, and everybody laughed, and you tell the joke, and nobody laughs. As a matter of fact, all of a sudden you realize that they think it was politically incorrect because you don't tell jokes about old people or whatever. Actually, that's most fun. But suddenly you realize nobody laughed. Now your ego is going to form a thing. I am not a funny person. I should never tell a joke again. That was really bad. That goes into your ego, as well as everything else. The ego up to now has been based on your experiences, which are all great. Experiences are wonderful. Now an emotional story, which is okay as long as you recognize it for that. It's an emotional story, that's all it is, and the story can change. But the part that doesn't work so well here is as seen through others, how they perceive you. So let's take a good deep breath of that as I make my point that the ego, because of Freud and because of you, has not been a friend. It has not been a friend at all. It's been something that you've tried running from, hiding from, polishing, working on, destroying, blowing apart, reinforcing, all the rest of that. This thing called an ego. And the origins of ego, Latin, I go forth. I experience, I expand, I go forth. So your first new friend in this year is your ego. Is your ego. Ego is a fine thing. It's self-awareness, as was said before. It's self-awareness, but no longer through the eyes of others, how they react to you. You know how it is when you get dressed for the day, you put something on, you walk outside, and somebody just looks like this little look like that, and you're like, this is terrible. I shouldn't have worn this. I'm wearing an orange, it looks like a lumberjack shirt with a royal crest on it. I mean, who would wear something like that? And it looks great. But the ego is like, I shouldn't have worn that. I'm going to stand out and this looks stupid. So the first thing let's do is drop the third part here, as seen through others. It doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter anymore. The emotional story part, the stories up to now have been emotional, and emotions can be good and fun. They're very human-oriented. But let's change that to not just emotional stories, but let's change it to, let's call it instead based on, what word to replace emotions? How do you want your stories to be? Based on, what would we say? Your best stories, awesome stories. Let's change that from based on your, how about creative, Entertaining? How about wise? How about wise? You know, wise can still be emotional. Wise can be awesome and outstanding. But bringing in the wisdom. Bringing in the wisdom now. No longer you perceiving yourself through others, people's reactions to you, but now it's your wisdom in your stories. And they can be funny and they can be tragic. They can be heartfelt. They can be brutal. It doesn't matter. But now you got the wisdom. So while we're at it, Linda.
Wait, I'm finishing.
Okay. Bringing in your wise stories.
Wisdom or wise stories?
Bringing your experiences based on your wise stories. Yeah. Let's really feel into that for this year. I mean, this is where you're going. You really don't actually have to work on it. But let's, yeah. I didn't, Amy, not this time. So your best friends for this year, your new friends coming in, your new friends. First you, the ego. Let's breathe the ego in. It's not a bad thing. It's the human in experience. And that's what the human is here for, to experience. But as you breathe in your new friend, the ego, which is not a bad thing at all. You can have a lot, you can really be full of ego. It just means I go, I experience, I am that I am. But now with the wisdom.